The terminal was buzzing with the usual post-landing chaos. Passengers grabbed their bags, stretched their limbs, and shuffled toward the exit. Victoria stood calmly, letting the crowd thin before stepping into the aisle. The same flight attendant who had dismissed her now stood at the front, thanking passengers one by one, still without looking Victoria's way. When it was her turn, Victoria met the woman's eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. The attendant blinked, caught off guard by the politeness, then turned away without a word. Victoria stepped off the plane and into the jet bridge. A man in a dark suit stood just outside, holding a tablet and scanning the stream of passengers. When he saw her, he straightened up. Ms. Lane Victoria nodded. "Right this way." She followed him down a side hallway, away from the crowds. Within seconds, they entered a private lounge, a sleek, glass-walled space overlooking the runway. Inside were two more people, a woman in a navy blazer and a man wearing an airport operations badge. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Victoria said as she entered. "Of course," the woman replied. "Your message was flagged priority. What happened?" Victoria sat down and placed her phone on the table. "I was denied basic first-class service, ignored, lied to, and judged, probably based on my appearance." She looked up at them. That flight crew failed to meet not only customer standards, but internal code of conduct standards. Section 4.2.3 of our Joint Operating Agreement makes it clear. All partner airline staff must maintain respectful service, regardless of appearance, race, or perceived status. That crew didn't just make a mistake. They embarrassed this airline and our partnership. The man with the operations badge nodded slowly, already typing notes on his tablet. "I want the entire flight crew grounded until this is investigated, and I want the union rep notified. This isn't a request." The woman in the blazer straightened. "Understood. It'll be handled immediately." Victoria stood, her tone still even. "Let them know this didn't happen to some random passenger. It happened to an owner." She walked out, her voice still calm, but her message thundered through the walls. By the time Victoria reached her hotel, her phone had already begun to buzz, not with apologies yet, but with quiet panic behind the scenes. A senior VP from the airline's corporate office had left two voicemails. An email from the customer service head apologized for any perceived discomfort. She didn't bother replying. Not yet. She stepped into her suite, a minimalist penthouse overlooking Manhattan's skyline. She wasn't here for comfort. She was here for a meeting the next morning, one that now had a new item added to the agenda. She opened her laptop, joined a private video call, and three faces appeared, board members from her company, all looking curious. "Evening," said Charles, a retired executive who rarely showed emotion. "We got your flagged report. Trouble in the skies." Victoria nodded. You could say that she laid it out clearly, what happened, what was said, what wasn't done. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. "It's not about me," she added. "It's about what happens when people carry power without accountability. They saw a woman, dressed simply, and made assumptions. They decided I didn't belong. That's a culture problem." The others listened quietly, taking notes. After a pause, one of them asked, "What do you want done?" "I want the flight crew suspended pending full review. I want corporate training protocols re-examined. And I want our airline partners reminded, if they want our name attached, their service has to reflect our values." Charles leaned back, nodding. Done. Victoria ended the call and sat back in her chair, finally allowing herself a breath. This wasn't about getting someone fired for rudeness. It was about setting a standard. She didn't rise by pushing people down. She rose by making sure systems worked right for everyone. And when they didn't, she didn't shout. She acted. An hour later, a message from the airline's CEO finally came through. Deeply sorry. We are taking immediate action. Entire crew removed from schedule. Internal audit underway. Expect follow-up within 24 hours, Victoria read it once and closed the app. This wasn't personal anymore. It was business. And business was watching. It was supposed to be a peaceful flight. Clear skies, a smooth ride from Los Angeles to New York, and a first-class seat meant to provide comfort and quiet. But for Victoria Lane, it was anything but that. Victoria wasn't just any passenger. She was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in America, Sharp, and respected across industries. She had built her empire from scratch. But unlike many others in her position, Victoria didn't wear her success on her sleeve. No flashy clothes, no loud behavior, just calm confidence. As she stepped into the first-class cabin, dressed in a plain black blazer and jeans, she greeted the flight attendants with a polite smile. Most of them barely looked at her. One of them, a tall woman with a sharp tone, glanced at Victoria and said, "Economy is down the other way." Victoria blinked, confused. "I'm in 2A, she replied, showing her boarding pass. The attendant frowned but said nothing, stepping aside. Victoria took her seat quietly, but something about the attitude bothered her. She brushed it off. Maybe the woman was having a bad day. As the plane took off, the usual first-class services began. Warm towels, drinks, menus. But when the attendant came down the aisle, she skipped Victoria completely. No menu, no offer of drinks. Victoria waited patiently, thinking maybe they'd return. But as time passed, she saw other passengers being served their meals while she sat there with nothing. She finally pressed the call button. After a long wait, the same flight attendant showed up, clearly annoyed. "Yes, I didn't receive a menu or anything to eat," Victoria said, still calm. The attendant rolled her eyes. "We ran out. Next time, book earlier." Victoria looked at her, stunned. First class had empty seats. She knew they hadn't run out, but she said nothing. Not yet. She just smiled slightly and said, "Okay." Inside, though, a storm was building. Victoria leaned back in her seat, her expression calm but her mind racing. She didn't need special treatment, but what had just happened wasn't about a meal. It was about respect. She had been dismissed, ignored, and openly lied to in a cabin she paid thousands to be in. And it wasn't just a mistake, it felt intentional, she observed quietly. The same flight attendant who had dismissed her was now laughing with another passenger, pouring wine into his glass like they were old friends. The tray of food still half full beside her. So they didn't run out. Victoria pulled out her tablet and began typing. Not angry words, just notes, details, names, times, calm, focused. She had dealt with worse. But she believed in accountability. She believed in making sure no one else had to feel what she just felt, unseen and disrespected. An older man sitting across from her leaned over slightly and whispered, "Don't let it get to you. They always treat people different based on what they assume." Victoria gave a tight smile. "They assumed wrong." He raised his brow. "You work in business." She nodded. "Something like that." The rest of the flight was quiet, but tense. Other crew members passed her without a glance. No water, no check-in. Even when turbulence hit and drinks spilled around her, no one came to assist. It was clear this wasn't one person's mistake. The entire crew had silently agreed to treat her like she didn't belong. But Victoria didn't cause a scene. She didn't raise her voice or ask for a supervisor. Instead, she waited. As the plane began its descent into New York, the captain's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly. Local time is 5:42 p.m. Weather is clear and sunny. Thank you for flying with us." Victoria placed her tablet back into her bag, adjusted her blazer, and looked out the window with a steady gaze. She wasn't angry. She was ready, because what no one on that plane knew was that the airline, she owned part of it. And tomorrow morning, everyone in that cabin would know exactly who she was.